This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 388 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's called Iceland, Chats with Locals. Before I start, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast. Welcome to my new series, Chats with Locals. I'm hoping to include one of these chats round about monthly or so. I've got Taiwan coming up next. The idea is that one of the best experiences when we travel is being able to learn more about a place by chatting with a local. But it's not always easy to do that. So I'm recruiting some locals from various places so we can chat in advance. Before we get to my Icelandic locals, I'd like to introduce the very appropriate sponsor for the Chats with Locals series this year, which is Slowly. Slowly is a pen pal app. It's a great modern-day replica of the joy of sending letters to people around the world. I've been using it for a few months and am loving it, and I will tell you more about Slowly during the episode. So over the last few weeks, I've been very lucky to have conversations with 3 Icelanders, and I'm going to share parts of our chats here. Unlike my usual episodes where I chat with people connected to the travel and tourism industry, for this series I've been throwing a much wider net. So I'm going to introduce you to a writer named Alda, an artist named Ragnhildur, and an entrepreneur named Halli, although he's very multifaceted indeed. Definitely one thing I learnt about Icelanders is it's common to wear many hats. I started off by asking them all what they like about living in Iceland, and Alda starts off with her thoughts.
I was born here and then I moved abroad as a child. So first when I was 5 and then a few years back in Iceland and then permanently when I was 10. So I returned when I was 31 to live here permanently. I've been here now for over 30 years. What I really like about living here is, what I like the most is the contrasts and the extremes. I mean, the extremes and the contrasts in the landscapes, of course, in the climate and in the seasons. I don't think I've ever lived anywhere where the seasons are so extreme. The winter is so dark and there is so much weather. And of course, the summers are just light and you get 24-hour daylight in the middle of the summer. And I think every Icelander, in every sort of change of the season, they'll say at some point in the autumn, in the fall, oh my goodness, it's 5 p.m. and it's dark already. And then again in the spring, oh my goodness, it's 5 p.m. and it's light already.
It's funny how we forget these things every year and then they still happen. Yeah.
I think our quality of life is pretty good. This is a small community. The population is just about 400,000 people. And it's a tight community. People get together when they need to, and we stick together. Housing and everything is pretty good. I mean, it's an expensive country. We pay a lot of taxes, but we have free healthcare. We have clean water. We have nature just on our doorstep. I could hop in a car being right here in the city center of Reykjavik and drive for a half an hour and be in beautiful nature. It's so accessible. It's a good place to be in.
The good things about Iceland are same as a lot of the bad things about Iceland. It's very small, which the good thing about that is, we have small problems. The political debate is on a small scale. It's not a very divisive culture. If you want to talk to someone, if you want to reach, even maybe the prime minister or the mayor or someone, that's possible. And, it's a peaceful country. We don't have an army. There's a lot to like about Iceland. On the flip side, it's a small country, so there's not a lot to do. If I've lived in a few different countries and a few different places, and I do really miss living in a big city.
After Alda, you heard Ragnhildur and Halli. I then asked my guests about what they think a typical Icelander is like, this time with Ragnhildur starting off.
there's this saying in Icelandic, "Þetta reddast," which translates roughly to "this will sort itself out, it will be fine." And we approach everything with this. And if we do have a problem, there is a problem, we come together. And we have done so in so many times in the past, whatever the problem is, we come together and we will do it our own way. And we are also quite creative when it comes to arts, poetry, music, visual arts, all of that. We are pretty creative, which I think makes us a little bit special in a good way.
Absolutely.
Because Iceland is very small, I think a lot of people in Iceland see themselves as big, but also have an inferiority complex. And so Icelanders in a group are not great. It's not a great, if you want to sort of rally the troops with Icelanders, it's a lot of work because everyone feels like they should be in charge and everyone has a strong opinion, and it's a culture where most people have multiple skill sets, so they're kind of good at multiple things, but maybe not great at anything. All of those things combined means that also we have kind of this inferiority complex where we always feel like we're not good enough.
Does that also come from there's a tiny number of people who speak Icelandic compared to the rest of the world, coming from a small, discrete culture? Is that part of it? Or?
Probably historically, yes. But now I think I think for a lot of people, it's sort of pride to be this kind of isolated. I think it's kind of the same as when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you want to be like everyone else. When you grow up, you realize that it's nice to be different.
Yeah, that's very accurate and very wise. You refer to people having multiple skill sets. What do you put that down to? Why do Icelanders often become multi-skilled?
Because you have to do a lot of different things. I'm a designer. When I was designing here in Iceland, my job was, I didn't realize at the time, but it was 10 jobs when I started working in the States, where you have much more specialization and they're very, 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 very good at what they do. Versus in Iceland, again, you just have to wear a lot of different hats because it's such a small country. And famously, the guy that coached the national team in soccer he was a dentist or something. And, that's a very Icelandic story.
Icelanders have this very wonderful sense of irreverence. They have this sort of attitude of, I'll just go for it, and they get things done. And they are, I think, by and large, very creative. So there's a lot of artistic and creative energy sort of bubbling beneath the surface here. Most Icelanders have some sort of creative side project going on, even if they work in an office or what have you. And there's this motto that is often mentioned in a connection that Icelanders use a lot, and that is "Þetta reddast," which basically means it will all work out one way or another. So it's just sort of just going for it. And that can be both a blessing and a curse. Some of the decisions that people make are not very grounded, maybe in reality, very sensible. But it also makes for an energy in the society that is quite Icelandic and that I personally quite enjoy.
I think between not worrying too much about what others think and also wearing many hats. I checked, and indeed, as Hallie said, the Iceland soccer coach was also a dentist. I do feel a little bit Icelandic myself. No wonder I love this place. I moved on to ask my guests about their favourite Icelandic traditions.
One of the good ones is our sort of holiday Christmas tradition. There's a few things there that are interesting. We have multiple Santa Clauses. They all have their different traits. They're all kind of rascals. One steals meat. One slams doors really hard. It's very strange what someone decided to put as these personality traits, and their names reflect what they do. Their parents are ogres, basically. Their mom is someone that was used to scare kids. There's a Yule cat which eats kids that don't get any new clothes for Christmas. It basically eats poor kids.
Oh no!
And so, I think it's a pretty unique spin on something that people understand.
There's this tradition around Christmas called Jólabókaflóðið, and that means the Christmas book flooding. That's when all the books, most of them, are published before Christmas. And it's a tradition that I think almost everyone gets a book for Christmas.
I love all the traditions around Christmas. So Christmas here is a big deal, and it begins on the Advent. So the first Sunday in Advent, which is around the beginning of December, 4 weeks before Christmas Eve. There are many, many traditions. In fact, I wrote a book about them called The Little Book of the Icelanders at Christmas. And I love those traditions. And I think they developed in large part because that is such a dark time for us, geographically being so far north, that it really breaks up the monotony of the winter and helps people get through that very dark time. So I love all those traditions, but if I had to pick one that is separate from this, I'd say our swimming pool culture is a lovely tradition. So Icelandic thermal pools are everywhere. We, of course, have an abundance of hot water that comes straight out of the ground. So every neighborhood has a pool. And these are our de facto community centers. This is where people meet up with their friends and take their kids to play after work or start their day there or end their day there. Some people take their kids after dinner and, go to the pool and then just take the pajamas with them, and they go straight into the pajamas and straight home to bed. I think that is something that is very entrenched in the society and that I absolutely love.
A quick break in this Chats with Locals episode to thank the sponsor of this series, Slowly, the global pen pal app. Now, I only recommend stuff I love. I have to confess, I have got quite addicted to using Slowly, but in a good way. It's really different to a messaging app. If I send a letter to a pen pal, it takes time to arrive, up to a few days, depending on how far away my pen pal lives. There's no instant message. So that means instead of just writing a line at a time, everyone I've met there takes time to write a longer, more meaningful letter, like the pen pal letters I sent in my childhood. My very first pen pal on Slowly is a woman in Penang, Malaysia. We talk about our families, the cultural differences between our countries, the books we're reading, all kinds of random stuff. And I really have enjoyed making all these new friends. You can download Slowly for free, but I'll also leave a link in the show notes with a special offer. So it's clear that Iceland is a pretty unique country. I have only had the opportunity to visit once about a decade ago, but I found it both incredible and intriguing. I found it a place full of surprises, but I was curious to ask my guests about what they notice visitors to Iceland are surprised by.
I think many people don't realize how short of a drive they need to go to getting to spectacular nature. How close it is, because we have Reykjavik city and the city surrounding. It's not that big, but getting out of the city into nature is just a matter of minutes. And you can see this everywhere. And a lot of the people that come here during the winter, of course, come to see the Northern Lights. But many don't know that you don't even have to leave the city.
Really?
You can see the lights in the city. But of course, if you leave the city, you leave the light pollution and you might enhance your experience, which is, of course, a great thing. But you can see them here. I have been in the city center, walking the main shopping street, looking at the sky and seeing the Northern Lights.
It's amazing. I had no idea. I assumed you had to get, definitely out of the city.
Yeah. That's what people usually think. And of course, how safe this country is. It's pretty safe. As a woman, I feel absolutely comfortable with walking the city center at midnight any day of the week. I'm fine. We have this tradition with babies. When the babies are small and they're in their strollers, the mothers, they leave the babies outside in the stroller to sleep. So you might be going to a coffee shop and there's a sleeping baby in a stroller outside of the coffee shop, and everyone is fine with it. And it's just a tradition we've been doing for decades.
I mean, everyone is surprised by how few people live here. People are usually surprised by the weather. It's much better than people expect with a name. The coldest winter I've ever experienced was in New York. It doesn't really get, we get the Gulf current, and so the temperature here doesn't really go much below freezing. which is not what people expect. It also doesn't really go much above freezing. So it's a very temperate climate. And we have few very cold days, few very warm days. I think people are surprised by that.
I think when people first arrive, especially on a visit, they can be very surprised by the wind. The wind here can be extremely fierce, and the storms here are very bad. And I think that when people hear there's a storm warning or a storm is coming, they picture something quite different from what we're used to seeing. So what they experience back home cannot be transposed onto Iceland. And a lot of people get into trouble that way, unfortunately, especially in the winter. It can be very, very bad, but also in the summer. So there is a large stretch in the south of the country that you may have seen that there's a black sand. There's, you can drive for a long distance, and it's basically a black sand desert. And if you get caught in a very fierce storm there, it can literally strip the paint off your car. And that has happened. It's just like sandblasting. And what's even worse is that it can smash, all the windows will be smashed by flying rocks. And people have literally been stuck with all the windows smashed out and absolutely terrified, as you can imagine. So when Icelandic authorities like the say, stay home, don't travel today, you should definitely listen. And I think when people start to get maybe a little bit deeper into knowing the society, especially if they move here, one of the things that surprises people is the level of corruption that is rampant in Icelandic society, unfortunately.
Is that a consequence of, I don't know, is it because a lot of people know people and they kind of are helping people out, or is that the...
Yeah, there's a lot of nepotism, cronyism, and enabling because it's so small and people don't want to rock the boat.
This was a really interesting topic brought up by Alda that I'd never thought about, and there's more to hear from Alda soon. She has a new book, which is a memoir and a history, diving deeper into this part of Icelandic culture, so I'll let you know more about that soon. My next question to my guests was to ask them why travellers are so obsessed and just really, really keen to visit Iceland. What is the big draw?
They come here mainly for nature. They want to see waterfalls, puffins, whales, and glaciers. It's the land of fire and ice. Yeah. We have volcano, not active volcano at the moment, but just wait. And then we have the glaciers and all of these things. And I think we get people from all over the world. They all they want to go and see nature. Some of them haven't even seen the sea before, and I've seen people being so happy outside in a snowstorm.
Oh, that would be me.
Because it's an experience. For me, it's something that happens every winter, so it's nothing that's gonna blow my mind. But I absolutely get it that people get excited by things like this, and that's one of the things I like about the tourists in Reykjavik. We've had our shop for 7 years now, and we have a lot of tourists in the city center. It's mainly held up by tourists, and I love that they kind of make me see the mundane in a different life.
I think it's mostly the nature. The size means that the cities and infrastructure are not, you don't really come to Iceland for architecture. There are some decently nice, cute little buildings, but the nature is pretty unique. And you can go in a fairly short amount of time and experience pretty extreme situations, from really icy mountains to black beaches to geysers, and it's really beautiful. I think especially for tourists, it's when you live here, you don't see it. I think probably the same as in Australia, you don't really notice what's right in front of you. And then we have the Northern Lights, and it's a big attraction for people that are interested in nature.
You need to come next time and see the Northern Lights. I've seen them every winter my entire life, multiple times every winter, and every single time it's always amazing. You stop what you're doing and you just look up. It just does not get old. It's always amazing.
I have still never seen the Northern Lights. My trip to Iceland was in the middle of summer, so there was no chance. And I have spent time in the northern part of Finland during winter and too cloudy, no Northern Lights. So one day, it just thrills me though to think that Ragnhildur is still enjoying the Northern Lights every winter and that it never gets old. Now, my next important question was to ask my guests what we should know and think about before we travel to Iceland.
You have to shower naked at the pool. Very, very, very important. The first rule of Iceland is you must shower naked. So we don't use a lot of chlorine in our pools. And every child is conditioned to, before you go in the pool, you take your swimsuit with you into the shower and you shower very thoroughly. And then you put your swimsuit on and you go outside. Probably the thing that bothers Icelanders the most about mass tourism is the fact that tourists don't shower naked at the pool. It really upsets people. It's such an important part of our culture. And it doesn't count if you showered last night or if you showered this morning or you have to do it at the pool.
And before you put your swimsuit on as well.
Exactly.
It makes absolute sense, yes. I remember I think maybe there was enough signs at the place I went that made me think, okay, I really will do this. But for us, it's quite confronting. We are not often naked in front of other people.
I know. It's strange who aren't used to that. We're very used to it. But some of the pools have separate cubicles for that. And of course, the ones that specifically cater to tourists, like the Blue Lagoon or the Sky Lagoon, they will have, separate cubicles where you can do that. Or you can even book like separate change rooms, like individual change rooms for a fee, of course. I'm being a little bit facetious. I mean, this is, of course, not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is what we just mentioned is that, if you are going out on the road, you should check the weather forecast and the road conditions, especially in the winter. Do not head out unless you have checked the weather forecast.
The big one that I tell people is, especially if you're going to go outside and leave the city, is to respect the nature. It doesn't care about you, and it is not made for you. And so tragically, we have a fair amount of tourists every year that are seriously injured or die here because they don't understand that this isn't an amusement park. This is real life, and you get people going too far out on the beaches, and the ocean grabs them, or people going up on the glaciers and they fall into cracks, and people driving out on the roads here, which some of them are rough and they can't handle the ice and the snow. And that's the main thing is if you haven't experienced this, you don't understand it. And it is very dangerous.
Listen to the weather warnings. Don't dismiss them. Absolutely not. Because these people are not kidding around. The weather might seem fine at the moment, but it can change quickly. And the winter can get seriously strong. There's this one beach called Reynisfjara. I think most of the tourists refer to it as Black Sand Beach. It's a beautiful beach, but it's also extremely dangerous. By going down to the sand and by the water, you could be risking your life, and people have died there. The waves there are called sneaker waves, and they will just come and they will take you. And there have been many people who have died because it seems like it's okay. They have these warning signals, and it's a debate that comes up in our community every now and then. And we try to ask ourselves, what can we do? What can we do to prevent this from happening? And there is a sign and there is a light blinking. And if it's blinking red, you should not go into the water. When people are warning about these types of things, take them seriously.
Some really important warnings here. And as someone living in Australia, where we also have, it's a kind of a dangerous place in some ways. And we are often warning tourists about things like not driving into the outback without enough water and other supplies, or not going hiking without telling someone where you are, or being really careful of our dangerous waves at the beach. I can really relate to their feelings of, wanting to make sure that their visitors are safe. Now, I just have a little bit of bonus learning because Ragnhildur taught me that Reykjavik is a cat lover's city. Now, I like both cats and dogs, but if I have to choose, I am very much a cat person. I've always had cats, and I have an assistant podcast producing cat now. She stares at me very chillingly if I edit badly. She's often involved. So Ragnhildur and I got chatting about this, and she told me about how cats have historically become so beloved in Iceland, especially Reykjavik.
We are so big on cats. We have a pretty big Facebook group called Spottaði Kött, and people just post photos of cats they spot when they're out and about. And we also have one cat that is, he's the most famous cat in all of Iceland. His name is Diego, and he hangs out in a convenience store. He meets a lot of people, of course, and I think it's about 20,000 people in a group on Facebook only devoted to him. The only thing that's going on in this group is people posting photos of this one cat.
That is adorable. I love that. On the whole, do Icelanders prefer cats to dogs?
No, not really. But decades ago, dogs were banned in Reykjavik. They were considered to be farm animals and filthy, and there was an outbreak of some disease or something, so they banned dogs, and that ban, it was for a lot of years until they lifted it. And some say that that's when the cats took over. I'm not sure if that's totally true, but it's a good punch to the story that the cats, they just crept in and took over the place because the dogs were banned. But there are a lot of dogs as well in the city. But they are different. They're so different because if you go out and you meet a cat, the cat is just living his independent life, just walking around. A dog, however, is always attached to a person. So it's a different thing. They don't live their secret lives outside of the home.
Thanks again to Slowly for sponsoring the Chats with Locals series. If you think writing to pen pals around the world might suit you too, you can download it in the App Store or on Google Play. It's free to download and use, but if you get it via the link in the show notes or via notaballerina.com/slowly, you will get a special deal with Slowly Plus, including some bonuses and exclusive features like advanced filter options for finding pen pals in specific places, maybe Iceland, premium stamps, and more. Thanks so much for listening to episode 388, the first in a Chats with Locals series. I hope you feel like you've been transported a little bit to Iceland. I've got quite a lot of info in the show notes. For this episode, you can find them at notaballerina.com/388. I want to give a little background and info and some places you can learn more about my guests because they were all so cool. Thank you so much to all of them for being the guinea pigs on the first Chats with Locals episodes. First of all, my first conversation was with Ragnhildur Jóhanns. Ragnhildur, or Raka, is an artist. I initially connected with her on Instagram via her art, but when I was chatting with her, I also learned that she and her husband, who's also an artist, have a gorgeous shop called the Heart of Reykjavik. And there's like souvenirs for sale that are created from, for example, her husband's drawings of the city. They're printed and produced there. So like just by chance, I stumbled across the best place for thoughtful souvenirs. So you can find Ragnhildur's Instagram in the show notes and also the Instagram for the Heart of Reykjavik and the website for the shop. I also had the pleasure of chatting with Alda Sigmundsdóttir. Alda is an author of many books, including The Little Book of the Icelanders, The Little Book of Tourists in Iceland, The Little Book of the Hidden People, many, many more. And her new book, which I mentioned briefly in the show, is The Shape of Silence, which is a more serious look at Iceland and its history, part memoir, part history. That's coming soon. I'll add the link in the show notes as soon as that's out. And also you can find more about Alda in general at her website, aldasigmunds.com. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Halli or Haraldur Thorleifsson. You can find more at his website, haraldurtorleifsson.com or get redirected via halli.fun, Halli. Halli is a very typically multifaceted Icelander. He runs a design and innovation agency named Ueno. In the past, it was so successful he sold it to Twitter, and now he runs a boutique agency version of it. Halli is also a wheelchair user, and his own experiences of having steps physically block him from many situations led him to start a non-profit named Ramp Up, which builds ramps to solve accessibility issues. For example, in 3 years, they built 2,000 ramps across Iceland and have run similar projects in Ukraine and Panama. So fabulous for accessibility. I really love that. I am also going to leave a link to my Amazon shop of my Iceland reading list. My trip to Iceland like a decade or so ago was probably the first time I'd really specifically read novels in particular about a place before I landed there. And it was, it made it extra special. As you'll know, actually, if you listen to our recent book club episode with Hannah Kent, her amazing book Burial Rites was one of those. I will also chat more about Iceland and these wonderful people in the Facebook and LinkedIn groups, so search for Thoughtful Travellers on those platforms and you will find us, and more at the Thoughtful Travellers newsletter, thoughtfultravel.substack.com. So as I mentioned, all of this is in the show notes. You can find them at notaballerina.com/388. I hope you enjoyed our little excursion to Iceland and feel that you know a bit more about the country now. I certainly do. It was such a pleasure and joy for me to do this. So as I said, Taiwan is coming up next, and